This video was brought to you by Nebula. Support the channel and get more TLDR by signing up using the link in the description. Is Trump winning bigly once again? Well, it sure seems that way, because the former president has been making the rounds ahead of the November midterm elections, endorsing candidates across the board in an effort to get as many MAGA Republicans elected to office as he possibly can. But 2 years after his election loss, and a year and a half after being booted off Twitter, it's no longer clear that Trump has the same hold over the GOP that he once did. So in this video, we'll take a look at some recent primary elections, and try and find out if President Trump has finally outstayed his welcome on the campaign trail. First though, a bit of background. 2022 is a critical election year, with the upcoming midterm elections likely to determine the political landscape of the country far beyond even just this election cycle. In fact, not only is this election a critical test of President Biden's performance thus far, but it's also the first slate of congressional elections to take place since the 2020 census, and therefore the first time that many newly reformed congressional seats will be fought over, giving whoever wins them a vital incumbency advantage in future elections. So, who's actually likely to win these things? Well, as things stand, the Democrats aren't in good shape, with general ballot polling giving the GOP a 2.2 edge over the Democrats. Republicans are likely to sweep both the House and the Senate. However, it's worth saying that nothing is set in stone just yet, because, as we said in our previous video on the midterms, former President Trump's insistence on taking an active role in the GOP primaries, the races which determine who faces off against who in the November elections, has added a layer of complexity to Republican expectations, because, well, Trump just isn't that popular outside the Republican Party, and his affiliation could pull the rest of the GOP down with him. Critically, Trump's made a point of endorsing only those who align with his particular brand of Republican policies, so-called MAGA Republicans. Being a MAGA Republican essentially requires that you question the legitimacy of the 2020 election, and usually also involves attacking the quote-unquote mainstream media, as well as pushing far-right immigration policies. This issue of the 2020 election is so important to him that it even led Trump to pull his endorsement from prominent Alabama Representative Mo Brooks in his senatorial run, and withhold an endorsement from Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, a man who Trump once helped get elected to that very office. Nonetheless, while these MAGA Republicans might be further to the right than the rest of the American electorate, a fair few of Trump's endorsees have gone on to win their primaries. Author and Trump diehard J.D. Vance rode to victory in his Ohio Senate race by heavily emphasizing his admiration of the former president. In a similar vein to Vance, former NFL star Herschel Walker was able to dominate his Senate primary in Georgia by focusing on his pro-Trump sympathies. Now, while certainly much of this success came from his NFL fame, Trump's inclusion of Walker as a prominent speaker in the 2020 Republican convention and subsequent endorsement of his Senate bid did give Walker a huge boost to his electability. But while these are two good examples, the most notable Trump-endorsed victory this season has been that of Dr. Oz. Most famous for his long-running TV health program, Dr. Oz was able to win a very hotly contested Republican senatorial primary in Pennsylvania. And it was so competitive that Oz actually finished with a result a little too close for comfort, with a margin of just 0.1%. But despite that close result, there are signs that Trump's endorsement may have been key to securing his victory. At the time Oz was endorsed by Trump, he stood at a paltry 16.3% in the RCP polling average. But he finished the race at 26.8% in the polls, and eventually garnered 31.2% of the final vote, with a clear downward trend in the polls for Oz's main opponent. And all of this happened after Oz received Trump's endorsement. And in more good news for Trump, Kathy Barnett, an outspoken purveyor of Trump's 2020 election lies and all-round supporter of the Trump agenda, ended up coming third with 24.7% of the vote. Regardless, all of these results suggest that Trump still has a lot of power when it comes to moving Republican voters, even in places like Pennsylvania, which Trump lost in 2020. Now, we should say that Trump did also lose some races. The failed candidacy of Charles Herbster for the Nebraska gubernatorial race was the first loss for a Trump-endorsed candidate, while the implosion of Madison Cawthorn's bid to retain his seat in the North Carolina House cemented the idea that Trump's endorsement isn't necessarily a one-way ticket to victory. It's also worth noting that Brian Kemp, the very governor that Trump switched his endorsement away from, has won his primary election against Trump-backed David Perdue, a major win for the more traditional establishment politicians like George Bush, Mike Pence, and Chris Christie, all of whom campaigned for Kemp in recent weeks, and a not-so-subtle snub for Trump. Nonetheless, while the Trump effect clearly isn't absolute, it's clear that Trump still has a solid grip over the GOP. Overall, of the 60 or so House candidates endorsed by Trump, all but Madison Cawthorn won their races, while 3 of his 6 gubernatorial and all 6 of his Senate endorsees went on to win their primaries. Now, all of this, Trump's lasting influence on Republican nominations, will certainly worry the GOP establishment. And that's for 2 reasons. Firstly, Trump and Trump's brand of politics just aren't that popular in wider America. Trump's approval rating is sitting at -7, and there are also questions about his ability to bring in new voters, especially considering that his approval rating is currently within a margin of error of its level at the time of the 2020 election. An election that he obviously didn't win. Trump's ideological positions aren't that popular either. Only about a third of voters believe that the 2020 election was stolen, and while that number is still dangerously high, it's certainly not enough to win an election. So if the GOP ends up with a bunch of MAGA Republicans, they might struggle to convince the rest of the country to actually vote for them in the election. The second reason the GOP will be worried, though, is that the Trumpist candidates are prone to violating the golden rule of midterms. Don't be the center of attention. With just 16% of Americans happy with the direction the country is heading, and President Biden stagnating at 41% approval ratings, all the Republicans need to do is keep their heads down and let the voters come to them. But Trumpist MAGA Republicans aren't particularly good at keeping their heads down, as the case of Madison Cawthorn demonstrates, and their penchant for loud, abrasive politics could cost the GOP this time around too. Now, so far this hasn't happened. Trump candidates like Vance, Walker, and Oz are all expected to be highly competitive and even exceed the generic ballot vote share for their party, but it's nonetheless a risk that the GOP could do without. All in all, while Trump's influence might be waning somewhat, he still apparently holds significant sway over the GOP, and this might create a headache for the party come the midterms. Ultimately, though, there's still so much more to come on this story. But if you want more TLDR right now, then you should check out Nebula. That's our streaming service where we post all kinds of exclusive content, including our interview with US Senator Jon Ossoff and even a tour of our new office. And it's not just us either. After all, Nebula is a streaming service that we built with a bunch of our creator friends, including all of these awesome people. So if you sign up, you'll get more from all of them, plus tons of exclusive TLDR content, and all of our videos ad-free. If you're interested and do want to sign up, then you'll want to use the link in the description to get the Nebula Curiosity Stream bundle deal. Here's how it works. If you sign up to Curiosity Stream, home to the best documentaries online, then you'll also get Nebula included absolutely free. That means it's less than $15 a year for both services. Curiosity Stream for high-quality documentaries, and Nebula for bonus TLDR content. And doing so also really supports the channel, so thanks for your help.